Hello and welcome back to Planet Sail and On Course, our regular look at the sailing world. And as I'm sure you've probably spotted already, I'm actually not in Warsash, I've swapped it for my favourite city in the world, Auckland, city of sails and host to the 36th America's Cup. Now, as many of you will have already seen, we've had a little taster of what might be in store because the America's Cup World Series delivered 3 days of racing plus a fourth, which didn't go so well because the breeze didn't turn up, for the Christmas Cup. But we did get to see what these incredible AC-75s and their crews are capable of. We saw that there's close racing, which was a big surprise, I'll admit. We see that the boats will do 40 knots upwind in about 12 or 13 knots of breeze, a staggering performance. We saw that they can manoeuvre at close quarters. We saw that teams weren't afraid to take it to each other and put penalties on each other in the pre-start. It looked just like a traditional match race. I know there's going to be a few who disagree with that, but the fact of the matter is we had tacking duels, we had covering, we had penalties round marks, we had close action. It really was way more than many of us expected to see. And it's a really good sign, I believe, for the future. So I make no excuses for the theme based around America's Cup for this particular episode. Now, those of you who've been watching our America's Cup mini-series will know one of the recent features started off underneath the hull of the monster monohull KZ-1. The boat that failed to win the America's Cup for New Zealand. Now, over the Christmas break, I went to go and stay with some friends on the Coromandel, and they pointed out that that story started just down the road from where I was staying. So I got on my trusty company vehicle, I have to say that just to keep my accountant happy, and headed down to have a look. Okay, here's a question for you. How many times has New Zealand won the America's Cup? Well, the answer's simple, isn't it? It's 3. 1995, 2000 and 2017. Except technically, according to what's engraved on the cup, that's not the case. They actually won it much earlier than that, 1989. By this sailing club here, the Mercury Bay Boating Club. The challenge was made by Michael Fay. There wasn't a clubhouse here at that stage. The club was actually run out of a Ford Zephyr parked on the beach just here. But it was an extremely contentious America's Cup. It was against San Diego, who held the cup at the time, and they disputed as to whether it was a proper challenge because it didn't have a club and all kinds of other legal arrangements. It went to court. The court decided that it was a valid challenge and that it could go ahead. In the event, the K boat, which is now down in Auckland and has been there as a landmark to the America's Cup for many years, was the boat that was used, and it was completely outclassed by Stars and Stripes, Dennis Connor's 60-foot wing-masted Cat. That whole cup cycle was hotly disputed and was famous probably more for spending time in the courts than it was time on the water. One of the disputes was whether it was actually legal to race a 60-foot Cat against the 120-foot monohull. It went to the courts, and the court said that actually the race should have been in a similar boat to that of the challengers. And interestingly, the courts awarded the America's Cup to the Mercury Bay Boating Club. That's how they got their name on the trophy. But that wasn't the end of the story, because the San Diego Yacht Club disputed that, took it back to the courts and eventually won. But it has to be one of the most extraordinary victories in the America's Cup. A victory without actually ever winning it on the water. But anyway, it's a fascinating place, and I remember that whole wrangle going on. I remember the dispute about the Mercury Bay Boating Club being based out the back of a car rather than in a club. And what a place it is. It's absolutely beautiful here. The club is a modest little club. It's certainly not like any of the Royals that we're used to when it comes to challenges. But what a spectacular spot and an extraordinary story.
It was never won on the water, but our name is engraved on the old mug. So we're just teaching our kids now about the history of this small club, this rural club, and how us as little David went up against the Goliath of the San Diego Yacht Club. So we see ourselves as a youth development program. As we know, sailing is just a platform for building confidence, coping with adversity, teaching kids how to deal with nature, how to respect nature. So we bring programs during the winter that allow the kids to experience what other options are out there if you learn how to sail, if you become comfortable on the ocean. So we've done lectures on the superyacht industry, the Volvo and Whitbread Round the World race, the Vendée Globe, and the America's Cup.
Now, as anybody who's been to Auckland will know, there's plenty of examples and testaments to success and indeed failure in the city. Now, one of the ones that caught my eye recently was NZL 60, the International America's Cup class boat that they successfully defended the America's Cup in 2000. And standing underneath that boat got me thinking. One of the great things about being here in Auckland is wherever you walk, there's an example of some of the America's Cup history that has been such a big part of this city. One of those examples is this boat here, NZL 60, which is sitting right outside the brand new Emirates Team New Zealand base. And what I find so interesting about this is there could not be a starker illustration of why the boats are doing what they are now. Because back in 2000, when this boat won the America's Cup, it had this underneath it, 20 tons of lead, 20 tons of lead. It looks ridiculous now. But one of the things that I find particularly interesting is that these boats weren't as far away from where we are now. Or to put it another way, you can see how we've got to where we are now. Because take a closer look. Sure, we don't have 20 tons of lead anymore, but look at these. Wings. They were all the rage back then. They're all the rage back in 2000 right the way through until 2007. There were all kinds of different configurations, different spans, different chords, different angles that they were stuck onto the side of the bulb with, but they were wings nonetheless, and they were delivering lift. Bit different to the wings that we've got nowadays, of course. But there's another clue as well. Look at this trim tab running down the back of the keel. Of course, nowadays we'd be calling it a flap. Doesn't really matter what you call it, it still does the same thing, generates lift at different angles of attack. And then right at the back at the stern, there's a super skinny rudder. At least that's what we thought it was back in the day. Compare that to the super skinny rudders now, and you can see how far we've come. But I think there's another interesting thing about this particular boat and the campaign that it represents. Because back in 2000, just to get to the America's Cup, turned out to be an incredible battle in the Challenger Selection Series. And in the end, it was Prada that beat American One, but it was a brutal slog between the two of them. Now, the thought was then, and indeed you hear the same argument put now, that the challengers have an advantage going towards the America's Cup because they get to fight against each other and gradually knock up the performance as they go. At least that's the theory. And it certainly looked like that in 2000. But when Prada went up against this boat, the defenders, they were walloped 5-0.
Absolutely magnificent. Dean Barker, it doesn't get any better than this. Team New Zealand complete the first successful defence of the America's Cup outside America.
Interesting food for thought, perhaps, in the context of this America's Cup. According to some of the world's experts, we know more about the Moon and Mars than we do about our own oceans. More than 80% of them are still unmapped, unobserved and unexplored. And the real unknowns lie in the depths below, home to the largest ecosystem on Earth. Here, a new sea creature, twice the length of a blue whale, was discovered for the first time last year. So if this has escaped our attention so far, what else have we missed? The Schmidt Ocean Institute, a sibling of 11th Hour Racing, hosts scientists from around the world aboard its research vessel, Fulcor, equipped with state-of-the-art technology to help find the answers. Answers that may help understand climate change, predict earthquakes and tsunamis, along with helping the development of unique chemical compounds with the potential to cure disease. You can find out more about these and other revelations that came about during the Ocean Race Summit by clicking the link above. Regattas around the world have been thin on the ground over the last 12 months. But of the few that were able to go ahead in 2020, the 57th Aegean Rally, organised by the Hellenic Offshore Racing Club, ran 2 races over 2 weekends. It's the oldest and one of the most popular sailing events in Greece. This year, the 58th event will see a new race added to the Greek racing calendar, the Aegean 600. This 600-mile offshore race threads its way around some of the most famous islands, including Rhodes, Kos, Mykonos, and has all the hallmarks of being a highly tactical race. It starts on the 4th of July from Cape Sunio, home of the Temple of Poseidon. According to the locals, it's a true t-shirt and shorts event, and while the breeze might vary, temperatures of 25 to 30 degrees are far more predictable. Under normal circumstances, a big selling point, but after the sparse regatta season in 2020, I suspect the Aegean 600 won't need any upselling. Angular and aggressive looks and a track record to match made Ran 7 the boat to beat back in 2018 when she was launched. So when Richard Matthews was looking at building Oyster Catcher 35, he already had a few ideas in mind, as did Ran's designers, Carl Keegan Partners. This is a 54-footer with a key difference. The CF520 is a water-ballasted IRC Grand Prix machine designed to be sailed offshore by just 10 to 11 crew. So given that her builder's fibre mechanics in the UK's New Forest down on the south coast are just a stone's throw away from Planet Sail, we thought that it was only right and proper to go and take a look.
We're stood at the moment inside the mould of our new project called the CF520. Boat 1, as you can see now, we're in the process of fitting the core material to the outside skin, we've actually thermoformed the core here at the front of the boat, and the areas you can see here now, which we're preparing with glue film, will be fitted with honeycomb materials before we do our next cook to 90 degrees, and then after that we start the inside skin. So when you look at the boat now, looking down, actually she looks very odd because effectively the top sides have been cut away because they actually go on the deck tool right now. But effectively they're a big chamfer up from what you see right now, which is very radical from a design point of view and very similar to some of the latest generations of boats that are being built. So we're now stood in the deck mould, or the deck moulding that you can see now, for the CF520. The outside skin has been laid and cured. The core is now starting to be tailored and fitted to the deck. And actually what you can see here is there's a couple of hoses kind of laying down here, and what we're actually doing is we're sucking the skin back into the mould to make sure we don't get any pre-release out of the mould, which is very important because otherwise when we start fitting the core, if we have any pre-release it won't fit properly.
Modern Grand Prix boats have become incredibly complex beasts, we all know that. None more so than the AC-75s that are currently racing down here in Auckland. But while America's Cup teams are big operations, many are served by smaller specialist outfits that thrive on manufacturing high-quality custom fittings. One such company is Moore Brothers, who've supplied components for the American Magic campaign. Sam and Oliver Moore started their business by setting up a composite shop in their garage. Before long, they'd attracted the attention of industry experts like Jeff Kent of Composite Solutions. A deal followed and the company started to grow. The workshop now covers 5,000 square feet over 2 floors and employs 10 staff. And among the cool kit that they've been building that they can talk about, they produce 10 rudders for Grand Prix boats such as the IRC 72 Vespa through to a Swan 42, along with a stack of America's Cup components that they can't talk about. But that in itself says a lot about the quality of their work. While Auckland has been preparing itself for the America's Cup Challenger Series, the Prada Cup, the Vendée Globe fleet has been sailing past the south of New Zealand. In fact, right now they're on their way to Cape Horn. But it's been an extraordinary race right from the start. We saw some of the big names forced to pull out of the race early on in proceedings. Then the weather refused to play ball, at least in the way that most people had expected it. We had upwind conditions, light weather, shifty breezes. It shuffled the pack several times. We've also not seen the same level of breakdowns, touch wood, fingers crossed, that you'd normally expect from a Vendée Globe. It has been quite a light weather event so far. But one of the other interesting things about the Vendée Globe is that we've seen some really interesting performances from older boats and rookie crews. It really has been quite a shake-up. Steve Ansell picks up the story so far.
The Roaring Forties occasionally lived up to its name for the spread-out fleet of single-handers, but so did the rarest of conditions, flat calms and warm, high-pressure conditions, unseen in this remotest part of the world. Out in front for almost a fortnight was Yannick Bessavant on Maître Coq, with early leader Charlie Dallin in second, having fixed his foil problem. Linked out was fourth, and rookie Damien Seguin third aboard Groupe Avicille, the first 60 without the aid of foils. The Paralympic sailor was born without the use of a left hand. The chasing pack of Lecam, Harriman and Josk ran the ice line, hoping for a better weather system, and repaired Louis Berton, lying to the north. In the winning boat from the previous Vendée, also hoped a following low-pressure system would shorten gaps to the leaders. Clarice Kremer aboard Banque Populaire 10, hanging on to the chasing posse, and then a long way back to the middle pack, being led by a Brit Pip Hare on Medallia on her first Vendée. Another Brit on her first solo round the world, the seasoned Miranda Merrill, who first crossed the Atlantic aged just 9, was lying back in 23rd place.
Christmas Day, South Indian Ocean, just above the Australian ice limit, and an absolutely glamour day. The wind is building slowly as forecast. I hope that you're all enjoying Christmas wherever you are. And by the way, this is the first time in my life that I have worn a Santa hat. There's always a first for everything.
Up ahead of Miranda in 16th was Pip Hare, sailing the 21-year-old Medallia on its fifth circumnavigation, but Pip's first race around the world.
It's a really lovely day out here today, and I'm just making the most of the fact that the deck is reasonably dry, and I've come outside to drink a cup of tea. I've learned that, we've got these really intense periods of hard sailing, which takes it out of you, and you kind of think, I'm not doing a lot. Why am I tired? Why is this taking it out of me? But I guess it's just the intensity of it, and my mind is working all the time, and the boat's just surging and rushing and banging, and I'm learning that I need to just give myself a little bit of time on these days too, and actually just coming out here, chilling, looking at the waves and doing nothing in particular. It's okay, I give myself permission.
I've had a eventful afternoon. I wrapped the kite. It was so stupid as well. Just me focusing on a detail and not the big picture. Did a jibe, which was quite a nice jibe actually. Came out of it quite nicely. As ever, the lazy sheet went under the boat. It just, I don't know, this boat just seems so bad for it. So it went under the boat, and I was worried about it getting stuck in the rudder. So I ran forwards to go and sort the lazy sheet out, and was head down, pulling the sheet out of the water. It was stuck under the boat. I dialed down a couple of degrees just to try and slow the boat down, make it easier, and the spinnaker just went wine glass. I think the most gutting thing is I reckon I lost about 10-12 miles probably, and I've just been creeping up the inside, I lost all those miles. Easy come, easy go.
Still leading the female charge in 5th place overall was the Franco-German Isabelle Jott.
Et ben, le bilan des 50 premiers jours, c'est que je suis super contente et super fière de ma course. Et je croise les doigts pour que ça continue comme ça. Et sinon, à bord de MACSF, aujourd'hui ça file, ça glisse, ça freine, ça tape. C'est reparti avec des embruns. Après les quelques jours de pétole, ça déménage.
Second lady in the water in 12th overall was 30-year-old Clarice Kremer aboard Banque Populaire 10.
En 2021, c'était une très belle année. Moi je suis un peu perdue en termes de date, de tout ça. Là, ça fait 48 heures que je suis dans la baston. Là, il y a une petite accalmie, vous voyez, je peux sortir dehors sans être en cirée. Mais ça fait 48 heures que j'ai entre 25 et 40 nœuds. Là, il y a un peu moins de grains d'un coup. Ça fait du bien, c'est reposant.
Luis Berton on board Bureau Valet was up in 2nd place a month ago, but he stopped at the remote Macquarie Island to repair masthead fittings.
Bonjour à tous, troisième montée en fait, deuxième sous l'île Macquarie. J'espère que vous apprécierez le paysage parce que moi je déteste ça. J'ai essayé de nuit, j'ai pas réussi, je viens de réessayer. Ça a marché, on est au bout de l'île. Va falloir qu'on redescende, je vous montre. On a vu des pingouins sauter tout à l'heure avant de remonter. C'est l'angoisse d'être aussi haut tout seul. C'est le bout du monde. Ça fait partie des trucs les plus hard que j'ai fait de ma vie de navigateur. Tout de suite!
German Boris Herrmann was in 4th place, wallowing in unheard of mirror flat conditions.
Hey dear friends, this has been a very eventful day. One day before Christmas. You don't expect an eventful day if you look behind me. Well, why has it been eventful? Because I woke up this morning, a very early morning, by a broach. That means the boat is thrown out of its course by too much wind in the sail, or too much sail area. So I had to take a reef in the main, and with the reef and the jib top I was going 26 knots. So I even pulled my foil in a little bit to protect that, because if the boat was fully flying. And from fully flying this morning, I have gone to fully stopped, and now to this.
Out in front, with Cape Horn beckoning, Yannick Vestavin found himself slogging upwind.
Eh bien, bonjour à tous. Tout va bien à bord de Maître Coq, au frais depuis plus de 24 heures maintenant dans la dépression là. J'ai eu 25-30 nœuds. J'hésite pour le film là, des fêtes de Noël entre le Père Noël est une ordure ou le bonheur est dans le pré, tu vois. Vous avez vendu, moi m'avait dit le Pacifique, c'est top, tu vas rêver. Des toboggans d'eau, des glissades à n'en plus finir. Voilà, pour le moment c'est plus la montée du Tourmalet qu'on fait quoi. Mais bon voilà, donc l'idée c'est de continuer comme ça en bâbord vers la zone des glaces. Là je serai proche du centre de la dépression. Aller traverser ce centre pour aller chercher la bascule de Noir. Avec des vents assez forts, des claques à 40 nœuds, mais dont je serai le premier à bénéficier et qui devrait normalement, si les fichiers et les analyses sont justes, me propulser en premier vers l'est, vers le Cap Horn.
Santa Claus found time in his busy schedule to pay visits to the entire fleet.
T'apporte les cadeaux. J'ai jamais été aussi gâté de toute ma vie. Le roi Jean Le Cam sur un très fameux bateau à Noël. C'est chouette d'avoir de la compagnie.
Ah, trop bien. Alors je suis nul à ça. Et je vais pouvoir binette. Ou alors je vais laisser comme ça et dire que j'ai réussi à le faire.
J'ai l'ange gardien qui veille sur moi. Merci la petite fille.
Merry Christmas!
Pas de la dinguerie ça. Du bon foie gras.
Je suis ravi. Hein? Il me va à merveille, non? N'est-ce pas?
Joyeux Noël à tous.
Et j'espère que vous passez un bon Noël, où que vous soyez. Et c'est la première fois de ma vie que je porte un bonnet comme ça.
Un joyeux Noël et profitez bien de vos familles et de vos proches.
Je ne vous cache pas que des fois il y avait les yeux un peu humides en lisant certains de vos messages.
Je vous embrasse, je vous aime tous.
A très vite. Joyeux Noël.
Eh ouais, on n'est pas premier, on n'est pas dernier. Mais c'est Noël et ça, eh ben, on ne l'enlèvera pas.
Profitez bien de ces fêtes de Noël.
À tous ceux qui sont tout seuls, bah moi je suis tout seul, nous sommes ensemble. Voilà, et je vous embrasse très fort.
Day 55 and tail-ender Sebastian Destremaux now trailed the leaders by some 6,800 nautical miles, stretching the fleet all the way across the South Pacific from Cape Lewin to Cape Horn. Medallia dropped to 16th place in her private 8-boat midfield battle, whilst the race ice limit zone was still being knocked on by the chasing front fleet. But that upwind gamble by leader Yannick Bessavin paid off as he passed the infamous Cape with a 160-mile lead over nearest rival Charlie Dallanza Pivia, who was in turn 300 miles ahead of Thomas Riant on Linked Out.
So once again, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your comments, your feedback. It's great to see so many people are enjoying it. Please keep spreading the word. Please keep subscribing. Stay in touch. Let us know what you'd like to see more of. We'd love to know. In the meantime, keep well, stay safe, see you on the water, and if you can possibly make it down here, enough said. Till next time.